Good morning, everyone. Thank you to those of you who've joined us so far on this early Thursday morning, gray skies. Just a quick check for those of you that may have just joined us. Please go ahead and mute your microphone. There's going to be a high attendance for this pre-proposal conference, so that will help make sure everything goes smoothly. And just to make sure we're all here for the same reason, this is this Stella Link and Cityscape Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, pre-application conference. We have a ton of great material for you. The target audience for this presentation are developers that are interested in applying for this these two NOFAs. This is general public, it's open for everyone, but that is the intended audience. So I just want to make sure we're all here for the same reason, and we're going to jump right into it. And I'm going to transition and hand it off to our Deputy Director, Derek Sellers, to kick off with an introduction. Derek, please go ahead with your intro.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Derek Sellers. I'm a Deputy Director here in the Housing Community Development Department, and I want to thank you for joining us this morning. You know, we at HCD work to create opportunities for all Houstonians to have access to safe homes they can afford in communities where they can thrive. This is the vision for our work. The Stella Link and Cityscape NOFAs represent a significant federal and city monetary investment of $34 million that leads right into this vision that we have. The outcome will be 2 brand new communities in Houston consisting of over 440 homes. We were already short on affordable single-family homes before Hurricane Harvey struck, and we all know the damage that it caused to even more homes afterwards. It's vital for the city to partner with qualified developers to build disaster-resilient, energy-efficient homes in these new communities. More than half of the homes will be set aside for Houstonians that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. We ask that you take advantage of this pre-application conference this morning. This is a great chance to directly ask the program team your questions about this NOFA and these 2 projects. Thank you for considering to partner with us and trying to achieve our vision for Houston, and we look forward to reviewing your proposals after submission. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Derek. That's a great way to kick it off, talking to the high level, the vision of what these NOFAs are part of, which is one step towards that vision. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, there are still people joining us. So for everyone who's just joining us, please mute your microphone if you haven't already. This presentation is being recorded and will be sent out. So feel free to take as many notes as you want, but we will send this out to everyone who's registered. And we're going to kick off with just some high-level introductions. We're not going to go through all the names on this slide, but as Derek indicated, this is a very important development for the city of Houston, not just HCD, but the city as a whole. So I'm just showing you the names behind some of the faces here so you can get a look at some of the titles. As Derek said, you have the subject matter experts here to directly ask questions of. Not all of us will be presenting, some of us will be in the chat. So I just want to have some of these names in the front of your mind as we go through these presentation slides together. We highly encourage you to use that chat option. So in fact, let's go ahead and go through that housekeeping, which is part of that. So as I've mentioned a few times, please mute your microphone if you're joining us late. Again, we're expecting a high attendance for this pre-proposal conference. So muting your microphone is going to make a better presentation for everyone, and also a better recording for everyone to watch afterwards. Again, as I've mentioned, this pre-proposal conference is being recorded. We'll post it on our HCD website, and we'll also send it out to everyone who registered for this pre-proposal conference. Highly recommend. Again, you have your subject matter experts here. Please put your questions into the chat during the presentation, and we will answer them as we go through and answer again towards the end of our presentation, our time together. I know Teams and Zoom, everyone has their own preference, but just I'm just going to do a quick hello in the chat. Quite literally, I put that in the chat so that way you see where that's at. Highly encourage you to use that throughout our presentation today. And we will have a Q&A at the end. So again, please put your questions in the chat as we're going through. We'll have dedicated time at the end of the presentation to answer those questions and any new questions that pop up at the end. And with that said, we want to give the roadmap for what we'll be speaking about together today. It's, again, as I mentioned, a packed agenda. So we're going to go through, for those of you on the phone, I'm going to read some of this out loud. And for those of you that are still joining us, please mute your microphone. Again, that will make a better presentation for everyone. But our agenda covers 6 main items. First, we'll go through the funding and solicitation schedule. Second, we'll go through the Stella Link and Cityscape sites, again, just to help make sure you're here for the right presentation. Number 3, then we'll talk about the NOFA summary and selection criteria itself. After that, we'll transition to item 4, which is our compliance requirements, which is listed in the NOFA, but we'll have our subject matter experts to walk you through that. And then number 5, we will show you how to submit your application, since we do have a new application submission process. And finally, number 6, again, we'll wrap up with some key resources that aren't necessarily part of the NOFA, but just some things to keep in mind as you're putting your proposal together. And then we'll answer the rest of your questions that have come up at that point in time. So with that, I'm going to transition and hand it off to Andrea to talk about funding and the solicitation schedule.
Good morning, everyone. In terms of funding and the solicitation schedule for the Stella Link and the Cityscape NOFA, the funding for each NOFA will be approximately $17 million. The funding source is a Community Development Block Grant, Hurricane Harvey, Disaster Recovery 2017. It is worth noting, though, that the funds have been allocated by HUD, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, but by way of the Texas General Land Office. So in addition to any of the requirements our lawmakers have passed that are associated with this funding source, we also have an added layer of requirements that would be imposed on us by the Texas General Land Office. And in terms of the timeline for both NOFAs, both Cityscape and Stella Link NOFAs will follow the same timeline. Applications will be due November 16th, 2022. The threshold review and will be completed, and any amendments will be due a month later, December 16th. We will announce the awards for these NOFAs before the end of 2020, before year end of 2023. Excuse me, that's an error. That's before 2022. We'll go through a series of legal review from both parties, the city and the developer, and some thorough underwriting. That'll take approximately 120 days. City council and loan closing will occur preferably no later than April 2023. And the construction timeline we're aiming for is quite aggressive at June 2023 into July 2024. We do have some reference materials here. You'll have access to the guidelines for specifically this program. We refer to this program as the Harvey Single Family Development. We have the Stella Link solicitation files. We also have the community feedback. We've gone through several rounds of making sure we receive meaningful feedback from our community for both development. So you'll have the link for Stella Link and Cityscape. And you'll also have the solicitation files for both projects. We do have a separate website for City of Houston Hurricane Harvey, exclusively for Hurricane Harvey funded projects and all things related to our relationship with the GLO. That's recovery.houstontx.gov. And the last one is also our partner in this, the Texas General Land Office. They have their own Hurricane Harvey website, glo.texas.gov.
All right, thank you, Andrea. We're going to go ahead and talk about the Stella Link and Cityscape sites in case you haven't taken a look at those sites yet. Just very high level, and then we're going to go right into the NOFA. Just want to make sure to note something. These are two separate NOFAs. Developers are free to apply for one or both, but we are just combining the information into one pre-proposal conference. So the first site that we're looking at together here is the Stella Link site, which is at 10301 Stella Link. It's the area and up on this picture highlighted in red. And we have another slide to show that in some more detail. But what this represents, again, it's along Stella Link Road, bordered by Willow Bend Avenue and Highway 90, which you can see here on the bottom right of the photo. It's approximately 12.2 acres, and we're projecting a total up to 194 total homes and up to 99 attainable homes. Those numbers are subject due to due diligence based on the awarded proposal and that developer going through the permitting process, but those are kind of our max numbers. So you may have seen this before in our community engagement slides. As part of our partnership with the GLO, we produced a draft as shown here in watermark draft site plan. This is intended to show one vision. We do not expect or are asking for the developers to propose in the proposal to follow this exact template. Please read the NOFA, go through the selection criteria, the community engagement, and put together a plan that you think works best. This is just our first kind of shot at it. Our other site is our Cityscape site, which is at 12606 Cityscape Avenue. And this site is a little bit bigger, so right under 15 acres at 14.9 acres. And it's along the intersection of East Orem and Cityscape Avenue, right along Highway 288, which kind of bisects that picture on the right there. And so it is a bigger site, so we are projecting more homes there, up to 240 total homes and up to 122 attainable homes. And we have the same disclaimer that's going to be based on the due diligence and your proposal. That's just kind of our max numbers based off our initial due diligence that we did. And one thing I did want to note about Cityscape versus Stella Link, the Cityscape site does have neighborhood POA, which we'll talk about in more detail, but that is a key difference between those two sites. And here again, you'll see our draft. Same disclaimer as before. Your proposal does not have to look exactly like this. We're not expecting that. We are encouraging our developers to be creative and making sure that they incorporate community engagement. And for those of you that are just joining us, if you could please mute yourself. Okay, thank you very much. So those are the two sites, and now I'm going to take you through the NOFA summary and selection criteria. I'm going to take a quick pause here to remind everyone to please put your questions in the chat. We have our subject matter experts ready to answer those questions as we go through, and it will help make things go smoothly at the end. So just be very liberal about your questions in the chat. I promise you, if there's something you have a question on, that there's probably 3 or 4 of your colleagues that have that same exact question. So with that, let's go ahead and go through that summary of our NOFA. So before we talk about selection criteria, we want to talk about project summary and some other details. As Derek mentioned, at least 51% of the homes will be sold at affordable prices to low to moderate income home buyers. We'll talk about what that means in a slide. But as part of this program, the city has acquired those 2 sites at Stella Link and Cityscape. And so the awarded developer, we will convey the land to them and finance a portion of the infrastructure or construction costs through a forgivable loan. It will be your responsibility as the awarded developer, I'm using that metaphorically, to develop, to build, market, and sell all those homes. And so just some more details behind those numbers that we just talked about on the last slide that we alluded to. Andrea mentioned that this is through, I'm going to use the acronym CDBG DR17 funds. For the city Stella Link site, the city, again, we have purchased both of these sites. So that was about 13.8 million in land acquisition and due diligence for Stella Link, which makes available up to 3.1 million for land infrastructure or home construction costs, again, through forgivable loans. For Cityscape, the city's investment in land acquisition and due diligence was about 12.3 million, which leaves available about 4.6 million in those forgivable loans that you can use, that award developer can use for land infrastructure or home construction. And all that would be subject to that legal conversation that Andrea mentioned in the timeline earlier. So let's talk about eligible projects. Again, this is through CDBG DR funds, so there's a couple of things to note up front. All homes must be at least 2 bedrooms and no larger than 4 bedrooms in terms of number of bedrooms. The affordable homes must be of equivalent size, quality, materials, and finishes as the market rate homes. So the only difference will be the sales price to that affordable home buyer. There can be no perceptible concentrations of homes by income level. So we need to see homes spread throughout the development when you put into permitting and we see your site plan. And all the homes must be new construction, but the city will consider site built or prefabricated approaches. Again, I want to highlight that for Cityscape only, there is a POA, and that will be a supporting exhibit, and definitely reference that as you start putting your proposal together. So we mentioned earlier the 51% of homes. So this is talking a little bit more about that. That 51% of homes must be sold to households at or below 80% area median income as determined by HUD. So that will be updated yearly, typically around April, May, June timeframe. Those affordable homes can only be sold to households that were directly or indirectly impacted by Hurricane Harvey. An easier way to think about that is you're directly or indirectly impacted if you were living in the city of Houston jurisdiction on the day Hurricane Harvey hit. An HCD will verify incomes based on, again, the current year, whatever that time frame is, would be next year's AMI levels as determined by HUD. So this is the part where, again, I'm just emphasizing again, because this is your time, your one chance to ask the program team directly your questions. Really want to encourage all of you as we go through the evaluation and selection process to be ready to put those questions into the chat. So before we start talking about the scoring criteria, I do want to mention that who will be scoring your proposal. That will be an independent evaluation committee. By independent, I mean none of the program team will be there. So the evaluation committee will score your applications based off the listed criteria, which we are about to go into and which are listed in the NOFAs. And that evaluation committee may issue letters of clarification as necessary. Actually, before we transition to that next slide, a couple of things I want to mention. The evaluation committee when you're putting your proposal together, the evaluation committee will only review what you submit. So keep that in mind as you're putting that proposal together, that these are folks in the city of Houston. They're intelligent, smart individuals. They may not have the subject matter expertise of someone who's putting this application together. So what I'm trying to say is make it as easy as possible for the evaluation committee to score your proposal. So things like industry acronyms and jargon, you can put that in your proposal, but make sure to clearly explain what that jargon means and what those acronyms mean. Make sure to be very explicit about answering the selection criteria. Don't bury the lead and put part of your selection criteria score on page 30 in the middle of a sentence in one paragraph. Make it very easy for this evaluation committee to go through your proposal and be able to score you based off what we're asking for, which we're about to go into. But right before we do that, we do have some threshold criteria to talk about. No officer, director, or owner in your firm can have has to have been avoided being banned or debarred from doing business with either HUD, the GLO, Texas General Land Office, or the City of Houston. You must have, as part of your application, or your certificate of account status from the Texas Comptroller. And you, as a developer, must have a minimum of at least 5 years of prior proven development of experience of at least 200 or more homes. And then finally, it's applicable. If this applies to you, you must submit your current 501c3 tax exempt status. So if you're not a nonprofit, this won't apply to you. But if you are a nonprofit developer, please submit that tax exempt status as part of your application. So this is the part I'm sure most of you are really interested in knowing more about, the scoring and how your proposal will be ranked by that evaluation committee. So we're going to go through this line by line, and we're going to talk about each of these in more detail. But our biggest category is developer capacity at a total of 50 points. And there's going to be a couple of subcategories, or 5 subcategories, which I'm pulling up now. Again, we're going to talk about each one of these independently in a few slides. The first will be prior experience, a total of up to 10 points. Single family home development experience. I'll just go and say all these are up to 10 points. Access to capital, financial strength, and prior experience of affordable housing. Our next category is disaster resilience of the homes, and then energy efficient of those homes. Both of those categories worth up to 10 points. And then we have our community feedback and priorities, which will also be worth up to 10 points. And we're going to talk about, again, each of these in the next few slides. And then finally, our last category, which is affordability value. And that one's at breaking the chain, and that will be worth at 20 points instead of 10. So as I mentioned, developer capacity has 5 subcategories. The total is 50 points, and each subcategory is worth 10 points. The first that we're going to talk about is prior experience up to 10 points. So each of these slides, we're gonna have kind of the same format. We're gonna show you where the evaluation committee is gonna be looking for this information. So then we'll talk about each category in detail. So the first bullet point will be the source where they'll be looking, which is the application content and project narrative, specifically your company bio. So again, don't bury the lead. As you're putting your application together, put everything where it needs to be so that evaluation committee can find it and rank you accordingly. So the applicant with the greatest number of single family homes developed in the prior 10 years will receive the full 10 points. All other applicant will be awarded proportionately. So we're going to talk about what that means here. We're following, this is still the same category of prior experience. So we have an illustrative example for you. Let's say developer A has in the last 10 years done built 500 homes. And that developer, again, this is just an example, illustrative example, and make that clear. But in this illustrative example, developer A is getting that full 10 points. They developed the most number of homes in the last 10 years compared to all the other applicants. Developer B, who's not necessarily second or third, but just an illustrative example, has built 375 homes. So the math will work out with the 500 homes. That biggest number will be the denominator. So you take your 375 homes for developer B, divide by 500, and then essentially multiply that by 10. And that is what that developer B is getting at 7.5 points. And to round out the illustrative example, you have developer C who's built 100 homes in the last 10 years. Again, you take that 500 homes, which is, again, we won't know what that is until we see the proposals, but will be the 500 homes, the most homes by any of all the developers for that particular NOFA. 100 divided by 500 times 10 equals 2 points for developer C in this category. Excuse me. So just a little caveat, some clarifications before we move on to the next subcategory. We will accept multifamily development based on units produced, whether they're rental or sales of their condos. And another important caveat, the highest scoring developer may not score more than 5 points greater than the next highest or the second highest scoring developer. Again, we won't know what that is until we see the numbers, but we want to make sure that's clear for everyone. And the final outcomes, because we're multiplying by 10, just to make sure everyone has an understanding, we're going to round to the hundreds place. Again, because we won't know the math until we see your proposals. So this is the second subcategory under developer capacity. SFs is the shortened acronym for single family home development, worth up to 10 points. And the evaluation committee will be looking at your application content and your company bio to look for this information. So you will receive the full 10 points if you have more than 20 plus years of single family development experience. 7 points if it's 15 to 20 years. 5 if you have 10 to 14 years of experience in single family development. 3 if it's 5 to 9 years. And 0 points if it's less than 5 years. So key difference here, you aren't being scored against your colleagues here. It's possible that all of you get 10 points. It's possible that no one gets 10 points. It just depends. But this is up to 10 points, and you can receive the full 10 points if it's applicable. So our third category under developer capacity is access to capital, again, worth up to 10 points. We'll be looking for this, the evaluation committee will be looking for this in the conditional letter of commitment from your financial institutions. So you will receive the full 10 points if you have letters demonstrating past financing on similar scale projects and also indicating an interest to finance the potential development of either Stella Link or Cityscape, depending on which NOFA you're applying for. You'll receive 5 points if your letters demonstrate past financing on lesser but relevant scale projects. And 0 points if you do not submit those letters. So subcategory 4 is financial strength, also worth up to 10 points. And the evaluation committee will be looking at your financial statements for this metric, for the scoring criteria. Your financial statements need to demonstrate liquidity proportional to the development costs that you're proposing. So we have some illustrative examples. Again, we want to make absolutely clear, we're not expecting you to use these numbers. This is just an illustrative example. So let's say for a development, developer A thinks it's going to cost 60 million to develop, and they have 30 million liquidity. You're going to take that 30 million liquidity and that 60 million. So you'll take the 30 divided by 60, multiply that by 10 for a total of 5 points in this illustrative example. Again, the maximum number is the maximum number of points in this subcategory is 10. So want to make sure before anyone asks, if the math works out that when you multiply by 10, it's 12 points. No, you get a max of 10 points. And this is another category where you're not in competition with your colleagues. You'll get the points based on what your proposal looks like. And finally, the last subcategory for developer capacity is our affordable housing experience, your experience in developing affordable homes. So we'll be looking, the evaluation committee will be looking at the application content and your company bio and your organization chart supplement. So the developer with the greatest depth and range will receive up to 10 points. And this is again where I want to bring up, don't bury the lead in your documents here, make it easy for the evaluation committee to understand what you're trying to communicate in your company bio and that org chart. So do you want to mention that this is a category where one developer will receive up to 10 points and everyone else will receive fewer points in proportion to the city's determination compared to that highest ranked developer. So again, do not bury the lead, make it very clear what you're trying to communicate under affordable housing experience. And just to be explicit, this will be qualitatively scored by that evaluation committee. So make it easy for them to understand your application. So moving away from developer capacity, disaster resilience is worth up to 10 total points. And this is going to be very similar to energy efficiency in some ways. We're going to be looking at, for the source, we being, again, the evaluation committee, the application content and project narrative. Just to make this abundantly clear, all applicants must commit to the IBHS Fortified Gold Standard in your home development. You will receive up to 10 points for doing so. 7 points for adhering to HCD minimum construction standards for new construction, and 5 points for adherence to City of Houston Building Code. Our next category is energy efficiency, worth up to 10 points, and that will be in the source application and project narrative. All applicants must commit to Energy Star requirements for homes. And very similar score and layout to what we just saw. You'll receive 10 points for Energy Star certification, 7 points for adherence to our minimum construction standards for new construction, and 5 points for home design adherence to the City of Houston's Energy Conservation Code. So community feedback and priorities is worth up to 10 points. As mentioned earlier, we had extensive community feedback earlier this year, and that content, those comments are on our New Homes for Stella link and New Homes for Cityscape websites, respectively. So the evaluation committee will be looking towards your application content and the project narrative to evaluate this criteria. So I just want to make clear as we go through these, I'm going to go ahead and pull them all up. So you'll receive 10 points if you incorporate 5 out of the 5 community feedback priorities, 8 points for 4 out of 5, 6 points for 3 out of 5, and so on. I do want to make sure, just to be explicit, Cityscape, the community at Cityscape and the community at Stella link had different feedback priorities. So make sure when you're putting your proposal together that you're incorporating, for example, if you're applying for Cityscape, that you incorporate the Cityscape feedback into that proposal. If you're doing Stella link, make sure you're using the Stella link feedback. The feedback from both communities is different. There's some things that overlap, but there are very specific requests that each community had. So just keep that in mind as you're putting that proposal together. And again, that feedback will be found at those websites. And again, we'll send this presentation out to everyone who's registered. So you'll have these hyperlinks and they are, I think, already on the supporting exhibit site, but for sure, we'll send this presentation out to you afterwards. And in the meantime, I do want to take a breath to remind all of you as we get to affordability value, which is our last scoring criteria. Please make sure to use this great opportunity to use the chat to ask questions of our subject matter experts. And with that, we're going to talk about the last scoring criteria, which is affordability value. That is going to be worth up to 20 points. We're going to be looking for that. Again, we being the selection committee, will be looking at the application workbook you submit for this criteria. And we have some illustrative examples of how the affordability value work. The affordability value will be total home sales minus the target, total home sales minus total market rate sales. So again, in this illustrative example, purely illustrative, developer A submits a proposal. And for those of you that's joined us, I think we had a couple just now pop in. Please mute your microphone. Okay, so developer A in this example, in their proposal submits that the total home sales will be 69.1 million with market rate sales of 54.4 million. So the affordability value for developer A is that 69.1 million of the total home sales minus the 54.4 million of the market rate sales. So the affordability value is at 14.7 million that we see here high in bold. The applicant with the highest affordability value will receive the 20 points. All other applications will be awarded proportionately. So we have another illustrative example. Here we're just going to show you the affordability values so that again, that developer A in their proposal had 14.7 million for their affordability value. Developer B's proposal had 12.2 million in affordability value. So the proportion will be that highest affordability value by whatever your the other proposals are. So developer B's calculation will be that 12.2 divided by 14.7 multiplied by 20. So developer A, because they had the highest affordability value, is going to receive the full 20 points. Developer B is receiving that 16.6 points. And so again, this is going to be another metric, another criteria, I should say, where there's going to be one developer per proposal that's going to get the full 20, and everyone else is going to be measured based off that what that highest affordability value is. So that's the end of our scoring criteria section. Again, please use the chat, ask your questions. I don't have visibility right now if people are using the chat, so I'm just gonna keep saying that throughout our presentation together. But I'm gonna take a little bit of a break now. I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me talk. And I'm gonna hand it to Crystal to talk about our compliance requirements. Crystal?
Thank you, Jeremiah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Stella Link and Cityscape Pre-Proposal Conference. My name is Crystal Boyce, the Division Manager over the Contract Compliance Area for the City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department. And for the purpose of this conference, I will be discussing a few compliance requirements that will be subject on project activities related to construction. And so much of what I'll be covering will be very, very important for the developer and in your selection of a general contractor. The compliance requirements that I will be discussing will be the Minority Women-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program, as well as the HUD Section 3 program and the City of Houston Pay or Play program, as well as the Davis-Bacon program that will be later discussed by Tiffany Boyce. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Minority Women-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program, this program is administered and enforced through the City of Houston per the Chapter 15 ordinance, as well as the federal regulations from HUD 200-321. The purpose of the Minority Women-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program, if you may not be familiar with it, the effort was to maximize participation of those minority women-owned small business enterprises, which is also what our efforts are in the enforcement of this program through the Housing Department. Construction project activities will be advertised with a 29% minority women-owned business enterprise goal requirement. What this means is that when you make a selection for a general contractor, all solicitations should be advertised with a minimum of the 29% MWBE goal requirement. All of the contractors that you are intending to utilize to meet this goal requirement will be certified through the Office of Business Opportunity. This is a requirement. And so make sure before you make any selections or when you're seeking out contractors to be used, make sure that you can verify that they're actually certified through the Office of Business Opportunity. That's the City of Houston department. There is an online directory that includes over 3,500 certified vendors. And so we want to make sure that when we're reviewing that information, once we get to that phase, that we can review that participation plan and see that you demonstrated good faith efforts to meet those goal requirements. There have been some new updates with the City of Houston MWBE program. If you may not be aware of that, this is very good for the primes. And so now you are allowed as a prime to meet 50% of those total contract goals. So for the MWBE primes, you will be able to choose which goal you would like to receive that credit for those construction activities. And that could be for MBE or WBE. And once we select that goal type for participation, the credit will be capped at the proposed percentage or the approved goal, whichever is lower. Okay, and so please make sure you pay very close attention to that. Remember, only those firms that are certified through the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity may be used towards achieving the MWBE goal requirements. The minimum requirement is 29%. Once we get to that phase, there will be a manager that will review all of those pre-award documents that you will request from the general contractors in those proposals and solicitations. What we'll be reviewing is to make sure that you're able to demonstrate good faith efforts to meet those goal requirements. And what we'll also be looking to make sure is that those firms are actually certified through the Office of Business Opportunity and that they have an active certification to hold to meet those areas that you have listed in the descriptions that they'll be participating and performing in. If you have any other questions about the MWBE program, there's a wealth of information on the City of Houston website. We have information on the Housing Department's website about the Minority Women Owned Small Business Enterprise Program, as well as on the City of Houston's Office of Business Opportunity website. Section 3 program requirements. And so for those of you who may not be familiar with HUD Section 3 program, this is a program that was implemented by HUD in an effort to generate economic opportunities in areas of housing construction, rehabilitation, and any type of public construction activities. And so for the construction activities on this project, on these future upcoming activities, they will be subject to HUD Section 3 requirements per the new rule 24 CFR Part 75. And so if you're familiar with it, you know there has been several updates with the rules as of the last year. And so we want to make sure that everyone is aware and so that we can make sure that we're in compliance with those program requirements. Section 3 will be subject to any contractor performing on the project that has a covered contract in excess of $100,000. When I say covered contract means that it's construction, any type of professional services that doesn't require any type of specialized licenses, anything that has non-construction related activities, anything for infrastructure related activities. So the majority of the activities on the project except supplier contracts. It's all about making sure that there's some type of labor opportunities on the project. And so make sure that when you're starting that phase of the project or you're looking for the subcontractors who are going to be actually in the field performing the work and building those houses, make sure when you convey the information that those contractors are aware that before they sign up to perform on these projects, that they too will be subject to Section 3 requirements if they have a contract in excess of $100,000. That'll be for the general contractor as well as every subcontractor that you plan to utilize on the project. Okay, and so as it relates to Section 3, there will be 3 numerical goal requirements. If you're familiar with the program, as I mentioned, that was part of the old rules that we have continued to enforce. And so if you have a contract in excess of $100,000, here are some of the few goals that you will be expected to adhere to. 10%, at least 10% of the construction budget is to be directed to Section 3 business concerns, okay? Also, 3% of the non-construction related activities are to be directed to Section 3 business concerns. Non-construction will be anything that you can think of that doesn't have any relation to construction. So oftentimes we see the compliance consultant listed in that area. You can have, maintenance staff, anything that you can think of that's apart from the actual construction of the project. And so 3% of the soft cost budget is expected to be directed to Section 3 business concerns. Okay. Also, we have the 30% new employment. And so that means for any newly created opportunities on the project, at least 30% of those newly created opportunities are to be directed to Section 3 workers. Okay. This will be for the general contractor as well as for any subcontractors performing on the project. And just to make sure you're aware, a part of that phase where we're going to be reviewing, as I mentioned, that participation plan for the MWSBE goal requirements, there's also a participation plan for the Section 3 program. And so for that prime contractor, before any activities are recommended to start, they are going to be expected to provide us a plan that demonstrates their efforts and who they'll be utilizing to meet these specific goal requirements. Okay. Also, as I mentioned, if you're familiar with the program, and even if you're not, there have been some updates to the rules. What also is required is a 25% labor goal benchmark. And what that means is that 20% of the overall labor hours on the project and 5% of that for targeted workers are expected to be performed by Section 3 workers. And so a good rule of thumb is if you have a lot of good crews that you enjoy working with, that will be performing on the project, it's time now to go on and start that certification process. Okay. In order to be eligible and to qualify as a Section 3 business concern and or as a Section 3 worker, here are some of the bases for which you can qualify under. As it relates to the business concern, if at least 51% or more of the company is owned and controlled by a low and very low income person, you could definitely qualify as a Section 3 business concern. Another qualifier would be if over 75% of the labor hours performed for your business over the prior 3-month period are performed by Section 3 workers. Okay. The last qualifier for a business concern would be if at least 51% or more of the company is controlled by a current public housing resident or residents who currently live in Section 8 assisted housing. Okay. Regarding the Section 3 worker, an employee or individual can qualify as a Section 3 worker if the worker fits or when hired within the past 5 years fit at least one of the categories as documented. And we will require evidence supporting records for the business as well as the worker to show us that you actually qualify. The worker's income for the previous or annualized calendar year is below the income limit established by HUD. HUD publishes these income limits on an annual basis. And so when you start that process, you'll have available the actual HUD income limits for 2022. And what you'll be able to look at is the household size. And so as it relates to Section 3, it's about the income, okay? And so they'll be looking at the income to make sure that the household size is within that range and those income limits published by HUD. Another qualifier will be if the worker is employed by a Section 3 business concern or if the worker is a youth build participant. The great thing about these certifications are for the Section 3 worker, the Section 3 worker certification, we have a digital platform. You can also submit information via email so that our professionals can process those documents. And as it relates to the Section 3 business concern, if you're already familiar with B2G system in regards to that MWBE certification, we have a separate same portal, similar portal to what's used with the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity, and you can submit all of your documents through that system to show us your interest in being a Section 3 business concern, along with providing all of the supporting documentation. As I mentioned regarding the certification process, here's some more very, very good information. In order to receive credit towards the Section 3 certification process, Firms must be certified through the City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department. We really enjoy seeing those applications where you list all of the various Section 3 certifications that you have, which is very great. But unfortunately, in order to receive credit towards those numerical goal requirements that I previously mentioned, you must make sure that those firms are certified through the City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department. I oftentimes see those applications and I get calls about the certification process, seeking an updated status. And what we'll see is that those firms are actually not certified, or in that process where we're reviewing those pre-award documents that's submitted by the prime contractor. Make sure that before you submit that information over to us, that you go in on our website and review the directory. It's public information. You can go in and actually confirm that those firms that you have listed that have, shared their interest in the project, you can go and confirm and make sure that they're actually certified through the housing department. We want to make sure that at the time that you submit those documents in, that they have an active certification on file. The certification process takes 7 to 14 days once the application requirements and all of the supporting documentation have been submitted. To complete the online application process, as I mentioned, as a Section 3 business concern, please follow the link that's listed here. It's a very, very easy process. You're going to make the selection based on which of those categories I previously mentioned that you want to qualify under, and per selection, you will be able to upload any of those supporting documents along with required documents. And like I said, if you're familiar with the City of Houston Minority Women-Owned Small Business Program, we ask for a third of the same of those documents. And so just go on and get those started. So once you start the application process, you can get it completed as soon as possible. Also, with the Section 3 worker applications, you may submit that information via email, the email that you see on your screen. And we also have a digital link now. And so on our website, we have all of the good resources that you can use in order to submit those Section 3 worker applications. Here's the link. As I mentioned, go on our website and take great use of the information and the resources that we have. Unfortunately, during this time, you can't directly contact us, but we have enough information on the website that can guide you with the information that you need to go on and get started. Remember, I mentioned about that new Section 3 labor benchmark. Remember, you may be familiar with working on some of our older projects, but for these newer projects, the new Section 3 rules are in place. And so what that means is that with the 3% soft cost goal, we have that 10% hard cost goal. We also have that 30% new hire goal. We also have added a new labor benchmark. And so what HUD wants to do is to track more of those actual hours that you're utilizing with these good federal dollars towards those individuals that are considered Section 3 workers and those targeted Section 3 workers. So 25% of the total hours that are performed on those contracts will be monitored, because what HUD will be looking at is to make sure that at least 25% of the labor hours are performed by Section 3 workers, and of that 25%, at least 5% should be performed by those targeted Section 3 workers. All right, so now we're going to get into the Pay or Play program. This is a City of Houston implemented program. If you may not be familiar with it, this program was implemented in an effort to level the playing field for those proposers that work on or are interested in working on these City of Houston contracts that provide insurance benefits to their employees versus those that do not. And so they wanted to level that playing field. And what they did was implement the Pay or Play program, which allows for the contractors and subcontractors working on the project to actually offer some type of insurance incentive. Please make sure you don't get this information confused. I know I mentioned a lot of numbers. And so for Pay or Play project requirements for any contract that is in excess of $200,000, the contractor, as well as that general contractor, will be required to adhere to pay or play requirements. And so these covered contracts are subject on construction service contracts, professional service contracts, amendments, and any type of supplemental terms or contingencies. And so if you have a contract that didn't start out at this amount, but over the course of the project, it increases, at that time that it hits that $200,000 mark, you're going to be subject to comply with these requirements. So please make sure you pay close attention to the requirements of the Pay or Play program. Also, what you'll see if you like to read about policy, in the policy, it'll tell you that any contract or project that's in excess of $100,000. And so we typically know that many of our contracts meet that $100,000 mark. And so don't get that confused. $100,000 mean that the project is in excess of $100,000. And as it regards to those covered contracts, any of those contracts that are in excess of $200,000. And so that is particularly directed to the general contractors and those subcontractors that you'll be utilizing. For covered employees, and so remember, if you have a contract in excess of $200,000, that's considered a covered contract, okay? And with the covered contract comes in a covered employee. And what this means is that if you have covered employees, you're going to be also required to provide these benefits to those covered employees. A covered employee is someone who is at least 18 years of age or older, works at least any amount of time for a covered contractor, and works any amount of time on a City of Houston project. And so again, a covered employee, these are those employees who will be expected to receive these benefits. That would be an employee who's at least 18 years of age or older, works at least 30 hours per week, okay, works at least 30 hours per week for one of those covered contractors, and works any amount of time on that City of Houston contract or subcontract, okay? Those employees will be those expected to receive either a pay or play benefit. Pay option. If you choose the pay option, remember, these are going to be individual requirements for the general contractor as well as any covered subcontract and subcontractor on those projects, okay? And so you have the option to pay, play, or both. And so if you choose the pay option means that you're going to pay at least $1 per regular hour worked for those covered employees, okay? That is on a weekly basis. And so for every regular hour worked, you're going to contribute $1 per covered employee per regular hour performed under that contract, okay? Please make sure when you are communicating this with your crews and your employees that they understand that this is not a $1 increase to their salary. These funds are deposited into a contractor responsibility fund with the Office of Business Opportunity, and those funds help various programs around the city as it relates to insurance coverage, okay? If you choose the play option is actually what the intended purpose of the program is, which is to actually offer healthcare coverage to the uninsured working on these City of Houston projects. And so if you choose the play option means that you're going to provide healthcare benefits to those covered employees, and those healthcare benefits will be monitored to make sure they meet or exceed the following criteria. The employer contributes no less than 75% of the monthly premium towards the total premium cost of the covered employee per month. And if the employee contributes any amount, it will be no greater than the 25% monthly premium cost. What we do when we're reviewing this information on a quarterly basis is we review it to make sure that that 75-25% ratio is actually being met by that covered contractor. And we also make sure that there's active coverage throughout the project duration, okay? And so this is required, pay or play compliance is required throughout project activities. And so remember, as I mentioned, if you choose the play option, you're going to provide $1 per regular hour worked. We have a secure system with B2G, a portal that you're going to be using to enter this information in, the general contractor as well as the prime contractor. When we get to the phase where you're going to be submitting those preliminary documents in, once the selection of that general contractor is made, there are also preliminary documents that we'll be reviewing for the pay or play information. And so that'll be from the general contractor. And there are also be documents that'll be submitted throughout the life of the project for those cover contractors that will show us and support that they are in compliance with the program rules. Also note, if you have employees that are not interested in participating with the pay or play program for obvious reasons, such as they're on their parents' insurance, or that may be on their spouse's insurance, that's absolutely fine. We have documents for that. And so on the next slide, it'll be information about, how you can access more resources and more information about these programs. It's all on the website. We have detailed information about the pay or play program on the Housing Department's website, as well as the Office of Business Opportunity website. Okay, another provision regarding these type of funds is another layer to that. And so remember when I mentioned it's just easier for you all to go on and get all of those crews that those employees that will be performing on the project, go on and start the process so that they can get Section 3 certified. This is a great rule of thumb because you see that there are several layers of compliance. And so another layer, as it relates to the workforce provisions, is that all Section 3 workers and the apprentice workers are to receive pay or play benefits, okay? And so that means that no matter what's going on the project, if we also have them certified as a Section 3 worker in that category, or if your employees are apprentice workers, we must ensure that those employees, if they're eligible, are also receiving those pay or play benefits. And so it's just easier at this time to just go on and start getting everyone certified. So once we get to the phase of where we're ready to get those bricks and the hammer swinging, you won't have any delays with that compliance information that'll be expected to be reviewed and approved before we recommend starting on that project. For more information about the Pay or Play program, please take advantage of it. You can follow the link that's shown on the screen for more information about those forms that'll be expected from the prime contractor, as well as those required forms for the subcontractors, as well as just more good information about the benefits of the Pay or Play program. If there's no other questions for me, put it in the chat. If you think of anything, we'd love to hear from you. But remember, after the pre-proposal conference is over, you will not have any direct communication with me regarding this particular conference until we get to the phase where we're ready for construction activities. And so thank you again for attending this meeting, and we look forward to working with you all.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Boyce, and I will be covering the Davis-Bacon and related acts for these for the reference projects. Again, my name is Tiffany Boyce, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to put those questions in the chat section. The Davis-Bacon and related acts will cover CFR 29, Part 1, 3, and 5, and I'm going to be discussing some of the requirements for the reference projects. Davis-Bacon and related acts is a federal regulations which includes numerous related acts. It applies to federally assisted contracts in excess of $2,000 for construction, alteration, and or repairs. This also includes painting and decorating. Federal assistance is provided through grants, loans, and also loan guarantees. And it also requires contractors and subcontractors to pay their laborers no less than the local prevailing wages and fringe benefits that's determined by the United States Department of Labor. There are some programs that do apply to the Davis-Bacon and related acts. The first one is going to be the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act, which is stands for CWHSSA. This establishes the regulation of time and a half after 40 hours is reached. It also establishes the $29 per day liquidated damages penalty for any unpaid overtime that isn't paid to the workers. Fair Labor Standards Act, which also stands for FLSA. This establishes the minimum wage, overtime pay, record keeping, and youth employment standards affecting employees in the private sector and also in the federal, state, and local governments. The Copeland Act, which also is referred to the Anti-Kickback Act. This provision prohibits the kickback of fees, wages, commissions, or granting of gifts by employees or contractors to work or benefit from project federal funds. It also requires the submission of certified payrolls to be submitted on a weekly basis, which follows every 7 calendar days. It also regulates allowable and disallowable employee payroll deduction wages. And also with the DOL Code of Federal Regulations 29, there are 3 different parts. The first part is going to be the determination of wage decisions. The second part is part 3, which covers the Copeland Act provisions. And then part 5, which covers the labor standards provisions for any contracts. The City of Houston Workforce Protection Measures. This is a additional appendix that has been included for particular projects that are considered to be DR17. And this additional workforce requirements that is enforced by DBRA, it requires safety training, which means that all of the workers are going to have to be either OSHA 10 certified or OSHA 30. OSHA 30 is going to apply to any construction supervisors, and the OSHA 10 will apply to all construction workers. At least one supervisor with OSHA 30 certification must always be present on site while work is in progress by all construction workers. The hourly base rate for this particular appendix means that any individual performing work, regardless of job designation or employment status, must receive a minimum hourly wage of no less than higher of $15 per hour. It must also be equal or greater than the prescribed federal prevailing wage rate. This means that regardless of what is prescribed on the prevailing wage that will be assigned to the particular projects, all workers on the site at minimum must be paid at least $15 an hour. Also, there's also an additional requirement for apprentice hours, which means that the general contractor must meet the 20% of all labor hours must be performed by apprentices certified by the Department of Labor. And this is a requirement that should be implemented up front, meaning that your OSHA requirements and your apprentice goals should already know, you should already know who you're going to have this to be met by, so that when the project starts, you won't have any questions on who's going to meet those apprentice goals for you. And also any worker that steps foot on the project that's performing any construction work, again, they must be OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 certified. The DBRA requirements for competitively bidding for general contractors. Once the owner or developer is granted an award and is ready for soliciting bids for a general contractor, the general contractor must ensure that the bid advertisement makes reference of the DBRA requirements prior to posting. In addition, an application must include the DBRA language and the applicable general wage decision. The request for the general wage decision form must be completed and submitted to the DBRA team for the processing and issuance of the applicable wages. The selected general contractor must also be cleared from any federal debarments and exclusions prior to any construction contract award. The request for the contractor clearance form must be completed and submitted to the DBRA team for processing and approval of the contractor. The construction contract must also incorporate the DBRA language contract packet, which also must include the labor standards provision in HUD 4010 and the prescribed general wage decision. The contract packet, the labor standard provisions, HUD 4010, the request for the general wage decision form, and also the request for the contractor clearance form are all available in the City of Houston's Housing and Community Development Department website. The DBRA compliance requirements, both the owner and the general contractor will be responsible to ensure all subcontractors and any lower tier subcontractors comply with the DBRA requirements. The subcontractors and lower tier subcontractors must be cleared by the general contractor from any federal debarments or exclusions prior to any contractual agreement takes place. The subcontractor agreements and the purchase orders must incorporate the DBRA language in the contract packet. Again, make sure that you're including the labor standards provision as well as the HUD 4010 and the prescribed general wage decision. The proof of OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 must be provided prior to workers starting on a job site. So the requirements for the OSHA should be submitted into LCB Tracker, which is our web-based portal, and that should be done prior to any work beginning on any projects. Construction workers must be classified and paid the applicable hourly prevailing wages based on the trade being conducted. And also the construction workers must be paid weekly, which means that they have to be paid every 7 calendar days. It falls on the calendar. And certified payroll must also be submitted on a weekly basis. The initial compliance documents and payroll supporting documents must also be submitted as required and available upon request. The Davis-Bacon and related acts, along with the City of Houston Workforce Protection Measures, Appendix 15, will be applicable to all construction activities throughout the life of the project, regardless of the size and nature of the construction work. Again, with the DBRA requirements for the workforce protection measures, make sure that you are letting your subcontractors know, as well as all lower tier subcontractors, that workers must be OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 certified, and there is a 20% apprentice goal that has to be met on the project. Again, we look forward to working with you all on the project, and good luck to you with the upcoming projects. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those questions in the chat section.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you, Crystal, from before. If you remember, everyone, I promised you there'd be a ton of information. So we're gonna give you a second to breathe. That was a lot of information, a lot of great information for you to consider, not only the scoring criteria, but also the compliance aspects. Just want to reiterate what Crystal and Tiffany both said in terms of, please use this time to put questions into the chat. We're giving you a second or so to compose your thoughts before we transition to the next part. We're about more than 3/4 of the way done before we get to the Q&A. So we're almost at the end of our slides, but we are going to show you how to submit an application. Again, just giving you a second or two to breathe, collect those thoughts. Just want to also remind everyone, we are going to send these slides that we're showing you, which have all these URLs and websites for your reference if you pre-registered. And we're also going to send this recording to you in that same email. If you didn't pre-register, if you joined us directly, we are going to post both this presentation and the recording on the HCD website as well. So don't worry about that if in case you weren't able to pre-register. I don't have an exact turnaround for you. We're going to try to get that out before close of business on Friday. And if not, then early next week. So be looking out for that email if you did pre-register. So that said, we're going to go into transition and I'm going to hand it back to Andrea to walk you through again the new process to submit your application.
So the next portion of this pre-application conference will discuss how to submit an application. So first and foremost, all communication must be sent in writing to andrea.smith@houstontx.gov and lindsay.broom@houstontx.gov. Sorry, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. So the next section of this pre-application conference is to go over the application procedures and how to submit one through our portal. First and foremost, all communication must be sent in writing to andrea.smith@houstontx.gov and to lindsay.broom@houstontx.gov. There is not to be any direct contact with any of the program areas. Any questions must be submitted by Tuesday, October 18th by 5 p.m. Any questions received will be submitted in letters of clarifications, and I'll show you where that is and which site that can be accessed. The application due date, just to reiterate, is November 16th at 3 p.m. Next, we'll go over websites, forms, and the portal and how to submit the application along with support documentation. So give me just a second here. Okay, so first, the first resource we'd like to share with you is the City of Houston Housing website. It's houstontx.gov/housing. And from here, in order to access the NOFA documents, you'll scroll down to funding contract opportunities under businesses. And then from here, you'll see Housing Department funding, NOFA. And we have 3 featured NOFAs, 2 of which are the large tract. So you'll see the large tract Cityscape here, and you'll see the Stella link here. So each box contains for each large tract its respective NOFA guidelines, the documents associated with this large tract NOFA for Cityscape and for Stella link, and the portal to submit each application. So let's go over just the Cityscape. They're both the same setup. So with Cityscape, when you click here, this is how you'll view the NOFA. It will take you to an external link to the City of Houston Strategic Purchasing Department. That's our procurement department. And you'll be able to access a NOFA here. When you click on that, you'll be able to see the actual NOFA document. Following the NOFA link from our SPD site, you'll have access to the guidelines. Guidelines can be viewed here. This version is as of June 24th, 2021. Any updated versions will be provided there also. So here you'll have the applicable NOFA documents. So you'll have a part number, and you'll have the first item is your checklist for both NOFAs. And I'll open up the checklist here so you folks can see what that checklist looks like. It'll allow you to download, or you can just view it. You have got both options. So this is what it looks like as a downloaded checklist for Cityscape. You'll complete the applicant field with the amount requested. And what I'll do is I'll split my screen here so we can go through the checklist. And you can see how it's organized relative to the website with the forms that's available for you, okay? So you've got, so the first item on your checklist is the checklist itself. You'll have the application workbook, which is right here. And then you'll also have the application content and project narrative. From Jeremiah's presentation earlier, he did discuss several items that you'll be scored on. This is where a bulk of that will be received. Your company bio, your site plan. As you can see, this content and project narrative has several components that really detail how you plan on carrying out this activity on the city's behalf. So you've got item 4 here, which is your certification regarding debarment suspension. That's the form you can download. You've got several other forms. And then you'll have items such as sam.gov, UEI, and registration. That's not a form. It is a required document, so you won't have a corresponding form on the website here, but you are required to still provide that. So if you continue on to the checklist, you'll see that it goes to up to 19 items here on the website compared to the checklist here. You also have respectively for, let's see here, this is Cityscape. Cityscape is unique that it has a property owners association. So this is a document as it relates to that. We also provide, for your reference, a preliminary community design. That's there just for a reference for you also. You also have a spreadsheet for affordability and subsidy calculation here, and it's an Excel document. You have the portal following your applicable NOFA documents. You have a portal here. So when you click the portal, it will take you to the submission portal here, and you'll complete the fields. Your project name, the address will be either Cityscape or Stella link, the name of your organization. Here you'll have an email address. This email address will be the email where a confirmation will be sent once documents have been submitted. The way this portal is set up, just as with any website or any application, for security reasons, if you do become idle here, it will log you out and it will not save. The portal doesn't have the ability to save partially completed applications. So we strongly recommend you complete all of your documents and open the portal with the intent to upload and submit only, instead of having it open and work simultaneously on the documents. So here at the bottom, it'll ask you if you are going to submit NOFA documents. You can say yes here, and you'll attach the documents, and I'll demonstrate that for you. It's quite easy. If you save all of your documents in a certain area in your computer or in a drive, it'll be here organized, and you can upload it here, and it'll have the same naming convention as you use in your actual computer document. We'll do the same. It'll upload both Word and Excel documents just as you have them saved on your computer. The only thing is please don't forget to hit this blue submit button. If this blue submit button is not pressed, we will not receive your application or your supporting documents. Okay. So aside from the City of Houston's website, you have, I'm sorry, let me go back. This is your Cityscape NOFA, and then you have your Stella Link NOFA, both containing the same process, guidelines, documents, and the same portal to submit an application. Aside from the City of Houston website, we also have the recovery website specific to Hurricane Harvey projects funded by the City of Houston. Here, this is a very good resource for you. And it has all of our Harvey recovery programs. You'll have single family development here, and this is the umbrella these two projects would fall under. You'll have access to the guidelines, any additional resources. You also have other resources specific to each project with Hardy Yard, Stella Link, and Cityscape. Okay. From there, let's see here. I would like to go over the NOFA itself. While we have the presentation, and it's really to give you folks just the gist of the NOFA, going over the NOFA itself is also helpful. This is our cover page for the NOFA. It has the critical information. We provide a summary of the NOFA here, and here's your table of contents within with what's contained within this NOFA. You've got an introduction. A lot of this we've just gone over, but I'm just laying out for you how it's organized and how it's parallel with the PowerPoint presentation. You've got your funding and your solicitation schedule. And as the next section here is what Jeremiah reviewed with the scope of work for each Stella Link and Cityscape NOFA. He also went over the evaluation criteria, which consists of both the threshold and the scoring criteria. And then here, I do want to go over where which I should be helpful for you all. When you're looking at how your application will be scored, you're looking at your first scoring criteria, which in this case will be prior experience. And there you can input that information in your application content and project narrative. So where that falls into your checklist is right here. It'll go into your application content and project narrative. So you'll know exactly what they're looking for when you complete these areas of your application and how you'll be scored on them. Let's see here. So we're now going over the application process and requirements. This is the pre-application conference. As we mentioned, we will issue letters of clarifications for all of these questions received. Letters of clarifications will be on this same link. So just as a refresher, to get there, you'll click the View NOFA. It'll take you to our strategic purchasing website. In addition to the NOFA itself, any letters of clarifications will be published here. Okay. So you do have required application content. That content can be found on your checklist. In terms of examining your documents and requirements, each applicant is required to carefully examine all NOFA documents and familiarize themselves with the requirements prior to submitting an application. In terms of post-application discussions with the applicants, we do reserve the right to be able to have to conduct presentations or interviews with applicants. All applications must be submitted through the portal. Paper applications received in person or by email will not be accepted. The city bears no responsibility for submitting applications on behalf of any applicants. Applicants may submit their application through the hyperlink only. In terms of the timing, applications will be submitted no later than the date and the time indicated. Your format will be Arial 12 font, double space, and the materials should be uploaded in this portal provided. There are certain page limitations. Please adhere to those as outlined, and the application materials will not be returned to the applicants. Applicants are advised to carefully review all the requirements and submit all documents and information as indicated in the NOFA. Incomplete applications may lead to an application being deemed as non-responsive, and non-responsive applications will not be considered. In terms of timely receipt of application, applicant remains responsible for ensuring that its application is received at the time, date, and hyperlink specified. If you encounter any technical issues or delays with uploading or submitting in the portal, please email myself and Lindsay, and we will address those technical issues immediately. Part 5 of the NOFA just goes over the contact special conditions such as no contact period. I'm just going to read this to you because this is quite important in terms of making sure we adhere to federal requirements. Neither applicants nor any person acting on applicant's behalf shall attempt to influence the outcome of the award by the offer, presentation, or promise of gratuities, favors, or anything of value to any appointed or elected official or employee of the city, their families, or staff members. All inquiries regarding the application are to be directed to the designated city representative identified on the first page of this NOFA. So with the exception of applicant's formal response to the application and written request for clarification during the period officially designated for such purpose by the city representative, neither applicant or applicants nor persons acting on their behalf shall communicate with any appointed or elected official or employee of the city, their families or staff through written or oral means in any attempt or in an attempt to persuade or attempt to persuade or influence the outcome of the award, or to obtain or deliver information intended to or which could reasonably result in an advantage to any applicant from the time of issuance of the application through pre-award phase and up to the date the city secretary publicly posts notice of any city council agenda containing the applicable award. However, nothing in this paragraph shall prevent an applicant from making public statements to the city council convened for a regularly scheduled session after the official selection has been made and placed on the city council agenda for action, or to city council committee convened to discuss a recommendation regarding the application. So we do have a complaints and appeals process, which we outline here. The city does reserve the right to cancel this NOFA at any time. We do have certain requirements that we disclose here in the special conditions. And then last but not least, the part 6 here are the federal provisions. Any and all federal provisions that may apply to any housing project is contained herein. And that covers how to submit an application, the non-disclosure, and yeah. Jeremiah?
All right, thank you, Andrea. We're gonna wrap up, just have a couple more slides. All right, everyone. There's 2 more slides, and these are just a couple of resources for you. This isn't particular to the NOFA per se. These are more a little bit down the road for maybe a Word developer to kind of keep in the back of their mind. But so we won't necessarily take questions on this, but this is a little bit of the palate cleanser before we get to our Q&A. So I'm going to take the first slide here and then one more slide with my colleague Nathan Washington. So a couple of key resources here at the department. Earlier, it was about 40 slides ago, I mentioned that's the developer's responsibility to market and sell the homes. But we did want to say, again, this won't be in the NOFA, but that is the ultimate responsibility of the award developer, but we are going to be partners in that as well. So a couple of key resources here. We've already launched what we are calling the new homebuyer interest survey. And so we're collecting information from folks who are interested in living in the Cell Link and Cityscape areas. That's already out live. So we'll be collecting information for at least a year before homes go for sale there. So we're also going to be using our website, emailing our contact lists. So this isn't something you'll be doing on your own. we will be partners in this section. And we also have our own income eligibility team. So you may have been wondering in the back of your mind, like, what does that look like? We will have dedicated staff that will do that eligibility to make sure that home buyers that are at that 80% area median income before the homes are sold, those affordable home units are sold. So again, just some key resources to keep in mind as we're winding down. You won't have to put this in the application, just as kind of an FYI. And we have one more slide, and I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Nathan Washington, to go over some broader City of Houston resources.
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Nathan Washington. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Large Tract Development Team. Again, these are key resources. Some of these resources you'll be able to use right now today, and some of the resources you will be able to use once the particular developer is selected. Right now, we have a developer participation contract with Public Works, where you can receive 30, 50, or 70% developer participation on reimbursement for any public infrastructure that you put in leading to the development. It's only for the public infrastructure that you install, not for the infrastructure that you install inside the development itself. Okay, there is going to be a link where you can go to download the DPC manual, and it'll give you a step-by-step process on how to apply, what documents are needed, and the primary points of contact if you have any questions. Also, PWE is offering a impact fee exemption for low to medium cost housing sold in the program. It's also can be used right now today. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware that every wastewater application on page 2 speaks to the impact fee exemption. So you can refer to page 2 of your wastewater letter, and it'll give you a breakdown. Also, same website where you're going to download the DPC manual, you can download the impact fee exemption form. As far as the resources for the program, we have developed a relationship with permitting to help expedite your infrastructure permitting and your vertical, your horizontal as well as your vertical. We have a dedicated portal that once you guys, the selected contractor, you'll be given access to this portal. You'll upload all of your information into this portal, and it'll go directly to our dedicated people. And they will process your application, process your plans, planning profiles, etc., in a timely manner. Yes, that's about it. I'm gonna hand it back to Jeremiah, and we can go to that Q&A.
Thank you, Nate. And just to be 100% clear, that expedited and permit process and that dedicated portal access will only be available for folks who are, well, I shouldn't say folks, I should say the awarded developers. So that's just something to keep in mind, that we're able to kind of move you to the front of the line when you're submitting your permitting and other documents that will make that process go a little bit faster. But we're going to wrap up. Those are the end of our slides. So thank you for those of you that have lasted with us this entire time. So what we're going to do now is one of my colleagues, Dawn Lee, she's going to go through, and for the benefit of not only this recording, if you want to reference it later, but for those of you that joined us by phone that maybe weren't able to see the chat, she's going to go through and she's going to read your questions, and then the responses our subject matter experts had to your questions. When she's done with that, then we will take live questions from the audience, which you can use the raise hand icon. I'm going to show you what that looks like very quickly. At the top of your page, for those screen, for those of you that are with us on Teams, you'll see a little reactions button with a, I guess it's a smiley face with a guy doing a high five. Because I know my face doesn't look like that when I'm raising my hand. But this is what it looks like. You'll see that my circle is, I have a little hand raised icon. We're going to do that after Dawn goes through the questions. And so if you have questions, you can go and use your raise hand icon now, and we'll call on you just in the order of you are in the chat. If you see that if your question's answered, you can just go in and click that button again. and it lowers the hand and the circle icon unlights. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand it to Don to read the questions and answers from the chat.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for staying with us through the course of this meeting. So there are just a few questions we have in the chat. The first one was earlier during the presentation, and the question was asked if a previous slide was meant to say that the developer selection would be at the end of 2022, because in error it says 2023. That answer was yes. The developer selection will be made by the end of 2022 this year. So then we have the next question is, what was the acreage for the Stella Link site? And the answer for that is the Stella Link is 12.22 acres. We have a couple of questions that were asking if the slides will be presented. And the answer to that is yes. The slides will be available, and the presentation and this recording will also be available to you. Another question is, are there certain goals to meet in regards to MBE, WOMBE, HUB, Section 3, etc.? So the answer to that is both developments, there's actually 3 developments, will be subjected to the MWSBE Section 3 and pay or play compliance requirements. We also have a question that is asking about the stance of garages, covered parking, mandatory, or those optional. Okay, and the answer, let me see. We are still working to confirm that information. Again, that question was, what is the stance regarding garages, covered parking, mandatory, or these optional? So one of the subject matter experts will be able to provide an answer for that. Another question was, in the community feedback slides, there is a mention to a Stella Link preliminary community design development. Are there design guidelines or examples that we can access? And in the presentation, we did go over what the scoring would be and if the community design documents and guidelines are required. The next question is, for those that did not register, is there a place to access these slides? Again, these slides, the presentation, and the Teams meeting will be available. And someone asks, where can the required application forms and documents be accessed? There is not a link provided in the NOFA. So we did provide a link for the website, and we will be sure to make sure that any required forms or links or anything else will be on the website that was provided in the chat. Okay, so the next question is, if a proposal is submitted with the highest affordability value, however, they do not meet the developer capacity qualifications, will the value still be used to score the remaining qualified applicants against? So the answer to that was, the minimum developer experience is a threshold requirement. The next question is, if an application is submitted as a collaborative effort, will developer capacity be the combined experience of both? And the answer to that is the combined experience of the co-developers will be considered. So the next question is the developer capacity for new construction only? Can it include rehab? Developer experience is measured based on experience developing single-family homes. Rehab projects will be considered to add to the developer's breadth of knowledge in new construction. So the next question is, the NOFA states funds must be expended by August 2024. Is this specific to only the CDBG portion of the funds? And that answer is the NOFA states funds must be expended by August 2024. And the answer is August 31st, 2024. And then we will clarify the second part of that question. And one of the subject matter experts can clarify the second part of that question is this specific to only the CDBG portion of funds? The next question is there any consideration for property taxes on the land during development? Will the developer be responsible for the full property taxes from the date of conveyance, or is there a deferred tax provision for X amount of years during the development? That response is there are property tax code exemptions for developers during construction for low to moderate income home buyers. Developers will be responsible pursuing any exemptions after the land is conveyed. And someone asks, is there a company sign-up sheet list for today's meeting? And that response is, if you logged into the meeting via Microsoft Teams, we do have your email address. If you dialed in via phone, please leave your name and email information in the chat. The next question is, does the city have possession of the $3 million funds? And are the $3 million funds of CDBG funds and the NOFA contingent on the GLO releasing them? That response is the GLO has approved the full $17 million for each project. Those projects are Stella Link and Cityscape to be included. The next question is there a projected price point for the 51% affordable homes for the 80% and below AMI? We are still working on that question. So that question again, if one of the subject matter experts can respond to it is there a projected price point for the 51% affordable homes for the 80% and below AMI? And we will get that answer for you shortly. And to the question that was asked earlier regarding the garages, the answer for that question is garages are not required but encouraged. Community feedback requested garages for community safety. The next question is, does Davis-Bacon apply even though it's single-family developer? That's a recent question, so we're still working for that answer for you. And then the very last question is list of participants. Please, okay, that is someone providing their information. Okay, so again, the last two questions, and then we're going to go ahead and go to Q&A where you can raise your hand and we will answer those. The last two questions again was, is there a projected price point for the 51% affordable homes for the 80% and below AMI? And then, does Davis-Bacon apply even though it's single-family development? We will answer those questions in the chat, and I'll go ahead and pass that back over to you, Jeremiah, for the live Q&A session.
All right, thank you, Dawn. Olivia, did you want to address the price point question, and then we'll have someone from the compliance team talk about Davis-Bacon again, and then we'll open it up.
In the NOFA package, we will provide a supplemental form, which is a home buyer price. It is based on the current AMI levels for the city of Houston, and that will also do based on the household size, 2s, 3s, and up to 4-bedroom homes. That chart will show you what the average price point for your home. So you would base that off of that additional attachment to the NOFA application.
Thank you, Olivia. And did someone from the compliance team want to address that Davis-Bacon question?
So I will provide that response from the chat. That was answered in the chat, and the answer was yes, Davis-Bacon has already been determined to apply.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. I don't think there's been any new questions in the chat, so we're going to go ahead and open it up. Please use the raise hand icon because there are still quite a few of you here. Please use the raise hand icon and we'll call on you to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we're at the end of this presentation, so please use this valuable time with the subject matter experts to ask any remaining questions and we'll address them. So this is your opportunity to do so. All right, I am seeing a hand raised from Deanna Berkeley. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Hi, Jeremiah. Just to follow up on the Davis-Bacon question, just to confirm, is it going to apply to both the horizontal and the vertical construction?
And if I could have someone from the compliance team address that, please.
This is Maribel Rodriguez from Davis-Bacon, and I am responding to the question, and yes, it will apply to both.
Okay, so is the project being treated more as a multifamily, like a all-inclusive construction project, and the individual homes that are being sold are not going to be individual, like separate? So I'm just trying to understand it, because in the single family world, we usually don't have Davis-Bacon, but when we do multifamily, we do. So it's kind of a mixture of both, it seems like. So that's why I'm just trying to verify.
The reason why it became applicable is because it's one tract of land that you're building 200 homes in one tract of land. So it's I guess the threshold is 8 or more. So we consider that already being Davis-Bacon applicable.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification and for that question. Does anyone else have any questions? I don't see anyone else with their hand raised, but I want to give you all, that was a lot of content, so giving you all a little bit of time to process. Okay. Again, we will send this presentation and the recording to everyone who registered, and we'll post on the website as well. So that should be definitely within the next 2 business days or so. I'm gonna start working on that as soon as we get off this call, in fact. So if there aren't any questions, we're gonna go and wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone. I know that was a lot. And a lot of information, and a lot of you stuck with us the entire time. We look forward to receiving your proposals, and thank you everyone who's attended, and we will be in touch with this information, the slide deck and the webinar later. So everyone, please have a great rest of your Thursday and a great rest of your week.